You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Challenge us at Wexford Insurances 0818 31 30 30.
I've just returned from an Enterprise Ireland trade mission to South and West Africa, which saw 37 companies go to explore business opportunities. On the last day of the trade mission in Lagos, Nigeria, I had the opportunity to interview our Minister for Trade and Development, Joe Costello, who accompanied us on the trip, and this is what he had to say.
Well, my responsibility is to promote trade abroad for Ireland, international trade. And we established an Africa strategy 2 years ago when the government was established. And I've largely got responsibility for ensuring that that's implemented. We've looked at Africa in terms of its potential. It's a rapidly growing continent. It has been the fastest growing area in the world for a number of years now. And it's expected to grow by a rate of anything between 5 and 10% over the next 5 to 6 years as well. So it's the new Celtic tiger, it's the new tiger, so to speak, on the block after the Asian tigers and the late lamented Celtic tiger. And South Africa is the number one country that Ireland have traded with in the past. So we were very anxious to look at other opportunities. So this particular trade mission went to South Africa. We brought 37 companies, which is a record number of companies ever to come on any trade mission to Africa. And then we came up to Nigeria secondly, because Nigeria is the largest populated country in Africa. It has enormous potential. It has enormous basic wealth in terms of natural resources, particularly oil, and it is moving ahead very rapidly. So we have our first ever trade mission to Nigeria.
So, Minister, you led 37 Irish companies out to South Africa and Nigeria over the last 7 days. What was the makeup of those companies? What sectors did they cover?
They covered a variety of sectors. We were particularly interested in looking at telecommunications, and there was a strong Irish pavilion down in Cape Town, which is a centre for telecommunications, and we have a strong set of offerings to give there. We had a services sector, particularly in Johannesburg, and then we came up to Nigeria, where we have a selection of services, a service industry, telecommunications, and a particular emphasis on education here in Nigeria. But also the agribusiness. We opened an office for the Kerry Group, as well as up here in Nigeria, and opened an office down in South Africa for Enterprise Ireland and for ESB International, who are doing very strongly there in terms of energy contracts that they have been getting both in South Africa, and indeed now they have an energy contract for provision of energy to the whole country of Botswana. So that's booming in that direction. And in Nigeria, we see opportunities, particularly in the area of education. We see opportunities in terms of providing software solutions in services areas where there's a lot of niche markets that Irish companies have become companies of excellence and have come up with the appropriate solutions. And that has been very obvious here in our meeting with the banking and the financial sector here in Nigeria, that they are very enthusiastic with some of the solutions that are being offered. So we're expecting to be very successful here. We signed a lot of contracts in a number of areas, and we are looking forward to building on this first ever trade mission here in terms both of coming back with a bigger trade mission and in terms of inviting a variety of business sectors to Ireland to see what we're doing in Ireland, look for Irish partners in that respect. So it's a two-way process which we think will be very beneficial for both countries.
For business owners that would be listening to this morning's show that wouldn't be familiar with the format of a trade mission, would you mind enlightening them for me, please?
Well, a trade mission is a very unusual animal indeed. Companies who have something to offer, who are interested in doing business in a country, who are interested in establishing relationships with another country, with another company, maybe establishing a partnership. They come along from Ireland. We set up through Enterprise Ireland mainly, but through our other agencies as well, Board BIA, maybe the Tourist Board, depends on what the particular areas are, but largely Enterprise Ireland would be responsible for, because they have responsibility for trade promotion and technology. So they would provide potential clients, and then we would start the morning maybe at 7 o'clock or 7:30 with a breakfast for a particular cohort of people that would be to meet, to network, and we would introduce it, and then people would meet and talk. We would go on then to various meetings in the course of the day. The day is pretty much sliced up on a very intensive basis, where we would bring client companies to meet potential client partners and explain what it's about and so on. And then contracts very often arise out of that, so we would sign perhaps contracts or memorandums of understanding, and this has been very successful on this particular trip. That continues throughout the day, the meetings, and then in the evening there will be a reception for key players in the business community. Irish people, Irish community will be invited in as well. The ambassador will have a list of people that would be appropriate to invite from the Irish community, and it's a great gathering of old friends as well as new people that would be potential business partners too. So it's a hectic schedule, and we've been here since Sunday, so it goes all day. We'll be back on Saturday morning. It goes all day and all week, and we expect that it will be the beginning of a very successful relationship in doing business with Nigeria.
How important are the Irish diaspora in relation to these trade missions?
The Irish diaspora are very important. We have a very good relationship with the Irish diaspora. We have established through the embassy business networks through the Irish diaspora, and it is the Irish business connections that are the, if you like, are the first port of call, because they have been through the mill. They know what is required for a new company coming cold. There's always somebody that can mentor them, as well as Enterprise Ireland. There's always contacts here, and we have some very substantial contacts. For example, in Nigeria, we have Guinness, which is the first area ever for Guinness brewery to be established outside of Ireland. It's very big, about 30% of the drinks market. We have a big company in PW, a big construction company that employs 5,000 to 6,000 people here in Nigeria. And with Tullow Oil, for example, which is a major oil company in the region. And all of those are very interested in helping out as well. But then there are smaller businesses, and there are people around the area. And not to talk about, there's still a lot of missionaries left still here in Nigeria, and the heritage and the history of the level of education and health work that was provided by the missionaries is still very, very strong here, and there's a great warmth arising out of all of that. So it's a combination of organised through the embassy, where our ambassador would really be heading a local market team that consists of the Irish Business Network, that has outreach to Enterprise Ireland and the other Irish agencies, and of course to the Irish diaspora, brings them into the equation, and it creates a nexus of warmth and friendship that is convivial to doing business. So we have replicated that not just in Nigeria, South Africa, but we're replicating that all over the world, and that's a key selling point. As a result, we have now record levels of trade, our exports. In many ways, I would say that it is our exports and our entrepreneurs that have kept the country afloat in our most difficult times, because they had to turn away from an Irish domestic consumption, which was very flat or almost non-existent, and to look abroad. And our small and medium enterprises have been able to do that successfully and carve out niches, and we've tried to help that as much as possible. So over the last 2 years, we've had a 6% increase in exports in 2011 and a 5.5% in 2012, which is very, very strong. strong considering the state of the world economy. And that has meant that now we have last year 182 billion, which is the highest level ever of Irish exports. And likewise, we have the highest level ever of foreign direct investment. So with the Troika about to leave the country in 15th of December, which symbolically will mark the end of the period of bailout and Ireland back to its economic sovereignty, I would expect that 2014 will be a very positive year for Ireland, both in terms of giving it confidence back home, but also in terms of its business activity abroad.
And looking ahead into 2014, what future trade missions are planned for that year?
The Irish, one good thing about, I have to say about this government was that we have decided from the very beginning that if business was flat in Ireland, we had to create business abroad. So every minister is on standby to go on missions. And every minister has been on missions and multiple missions. I probably go on more missions than anybody else because that's my area of trade and development. I'm going to Kenya and Uganda and Ethiopia next month, and I will have a large series of meetings of missions in 2014, and of course there'll be a whole plethora of missions built up around St. Patrick's Day when virtually every member of the cabinet and member of state will be abroad on one mission or another. Last year, for example, I was in Africa, and I attended 5 St. Patrick's Day receptions in Tanzania and Mozambique and South Africa, and had the great pleasure of pulling the switch to turn Table Mountain green. And at the same time there was another minister up in Cairo pulling the switch, turning the pyramids green. So that's an amazing symbol, and there's no other country in the world that has that kind of branding, if you like, of its country. So for a small country, we are very well got abroad. Our reputation is at an all-time high, and it's a good time for us to do business and to sell goods. So we will be ratcheting up the missions throughout 2014 so that we restore our economic sovereignty totally, and that we get the country back to absolute stability and prosperity. So that's the direction it's going in, and I would like to pay a tribute to all our entrepreneurs, to small and medium business people who might not during the Celtic Tiger ever have looked outside the country to do business. The fact that they've been able to turn their eyes towards markets in Africa or Latin America or Asia, and to take those steps and to take that venture to do that is unique, and that they've been able to do it successfully. So they're the true heroes of our difficult economic circumstances. They're the people that have taken us through the difficult and the dark times.
Very true. My final question for you is in relation to aid. Per head of capita, Ireland seems to give out more money on aid than any other country globally. And I'm just wondering, is there some way that the Irish government could operate from the perspective of giving out aid, where they could tie a requirement in to the provision of aid to the particular country that's getting it, back to a requirement for that country to spend more money with the Irish businesses or the Irish business community?
Well, that's a perennial discussion, and of course my portfolio is trade and aid, trade and development, so I'm the one that has to deal with that issue. The way that we have looked at it is that we have a basic principle, and that is that Irish aid goes to the area that is most needed. So where the greatest poverty is, and that's in sub-Saharan Africa, countries that we don't do much trade with, Malawi, Zambia, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, we're looking now at Somalia, and we're looking at the Democratic Republic of the Congo. These are countries that are coming out of conflict. And there's not that much interest in doing business with most of those countries on the one hand. So what we want to do is we want to stabilise them. We want to transfer Irish to skills to ensure that they have good administrative capacity so that they don't revert back to the way they were. On the one hand, we want to ensure that humanitarian needs are met so that people aren't dying of hunger. And that's still a major thing. About 1/7 of the world's population are still go to bed hungry every day. And children, very large numbers of children dying at a very early stage, both from malnutrition and from disease. So you don't want to make conditions on giving there. It's like making conditions on the Philippines. If there is a humanitarian disaster, you don't ask, well, look, can we get a quid pro quo? Certainly that's not the way to go about it. And the Irish people are the most generous in the world in disaster situations. We are not by any means the most generous in the world in terms of the percentage of Irish aid. We're about 0.43%, our government, of Irish aid, of our GDP that we give in Irish aid. The recommended level from the United Nations and the European Union is 0.7%. Our neighbours in Britain, for example, under a Conservative government, have exceeded the 0.7%, so they're in advance of that. So to say quite simply that we say that Irish aid should not be tied. In other words, it should not be conditional on getting contracts. It should go to where the need is greatest. But that being said, we recognise that by aid alone, no problems are going to be sorted out in the long term. And what we need is to move on from saving lives, preventing hunger, preventing disease, to sustainable development. And we're looking very closely at how that is done. And sustainable development requires expertise, which we have a lot of, and particularly in agricultural areas, that we can improve marketing and product and seeds and breeding and all of that, and we can help out in that area. And that we can move that up into trade, into business, into investment. So we see a continuum between the two.
You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Think Wexford Insurances for your business insurance.